My mom has a Mother's Day card that I gave her, and it says, "Mom, I love you. What are you going to do when I'm older and I'm living in the United States?"
Intense.
Yeah. Like at 8 years old, I was already like telling her like, yeah, I'm going to leave.
Hey everyone, this is Stretch Armstrong.
Hey, me llamo Bobbito Garcia de Nueva York y Puerto Rico. ¿Cómo está?
You are checking out What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito.
No doubt. And today's guest is none other, representing Los Angeles all the way back from back in the day to Guatemala, Gaby Moreno. Aplauso, aplauso. Stretch, we have known a lot of indie artists in our time. Gaby is the sort of embodiment of all that, but completely out of the hip-hop realm. She sings in both English and Spanish. She does a blend of blues, soul, Latin pop, and folk. She started as a youngin' in Guatemala, singing on stage. We'll get to that later. But then she moved here to the United States, and she has been rocking ever since.
Yes, she did that at 18. Not an easy thing to do at any age. Even more amazing as she's done it all without compromising her style. She has won a Latin Grammy. She's been nominated for a Grammy. Plus, she composed the theme song to the NBC hit series Parks and Recreation.
And didn't even sing on it.
It's just instrumental.
Crazy, yeah. So, I mean, beyond that, she's a humanitarian. She's done outreach for disaster victims in her homeland of Guatemala. She's had some ups and downs herself in her career, and she is rocking at this point. She is with us. Don't go nowhere. Gaby Moreno. Drum roll, please.
Some things were meant for each other. Fries and milkshakes, selfies and duck face, and now What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito and Spotify. Yes, the same app that has millions of songs now also has thousands of podcasts. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite shows and discover new ones. To subscribe to ours, search for What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito, tap follow, and get every new episode delivered to you. Podcasts on Spotify. They're streaming right now and now and now.
20th Century Fox presenting The Hate U Give, a new film about hope and standing up for what is right. Based on a critically acclaimed New York Times bestseller by Angie Thomas. Starring Amanda Stenberg as Star with Regina Hall, Russell Hornsby, Issa Rae, KJ Apa, Algie Smith, Sabrina Carpenter, Common, and Anthony Mackie. Find your voice. Change the world. The Hate U Give in select theaters October 5th and everywhere October 19th.
And we're back. Joining us now is singer-songwriter Gaby Moreno. Gaby, welcome to What's Good.
Aplauso, aplauso.
Thank you. Gracias.
Gaby, we're going to start off with a song that marks an important point in your career. All right, so the song was Escondidos, which you wrote for the John Lennon Songwriting Contest. And homegirl, you copped like a good swift $20,000. I imagine that changed your life and possibly your career.
It definitely did. First of all, it was the first song that I had written in Spanish, believe it or not.
Crazy.
I mean, I had been here in LA already 7 years. Someone said to me, but you can't deny your roots. You got to go and do something in Spanish. Got together with two friends of mine, Victor Indrizzo, Ari Shine. We went in the studio and we recorded the song and submitted it. And man, it was crazy when we got the call and found out that we had won the entire contest.
And then from there, like, just a major shift, I'm imagining.
Yes. After that...
In the course of Gaby Moreno.
Well, I remember that with the money that they gave us, I was able to fund my first album, which I recorded on my own. One of the prizes was, getting 1,000 CDs from disc makers. So I thought this is so cool. I get 1,000 CDs. I don't have to pay for that because, that's another thing that can be very costly.
For people who don't know, disc makers manufactures records. They manufacture CDs.
Yes.
If they still exist.
No, they do. They're still around.
No,
Yeah,
they still do.
Still around. Yeah, for independent artists, that's huge to have access to 1,000 pressings of CDs. Which
Absolutely.
You can sell at your shows.
Because it can cost up to like $2,000, to go and manufacture CDs. So that was pretty cool. And I remember I took 200 of those CDs. And back then there was this book called the Indie Bible. And it was just a reference book for independent artists where you could see, it would list either magazines, radio stations, music critics, things like that. And I just started sending my CDs out to people. And I sent out 200 CDs. And I just heard back from one person. So,
oh, my God.
Yeah, but that one person that I heard back from turned out to be my booking agent for a couple of years in Europe. So
really?
Yeah, so that's how I started playing in Europe. I got to go to New York and open for Fergie. That was another part of the price. And meet Yoko Ono.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I even got to go to Liverpool and play at the Cavern where the Beatles started playing. And it was just incredible to meet Yoko Ono and be a part of that whole world.
Gaby, how old were you when this happened?
I was, let me see, 2007. I think I was 25, 26. Yeah.
Because you've been performing since you were, 10?
Oh, yeah. So I was born in Guatemala, raised there. I mean, I started singing when I was like 6 or 7 years old. But when I was 10, I started singing professionally on stage in front of big audiences. My father was a promoter back then. And he would bring international artists to Guatemala. So, for example, one time he brought Ricky Martin, and I got to open for him. And other artists.
That is crazy.
How big was the audience?
Like 80,000?
No. But it was like a good 10,000 people. I mean,
and you were 10 years old.
And I was 10 years old, and yeah.
Wow.
How do you go to school the next day? Or do you just take the whole week off?
No, I would
perma smile.
Yeah.
The week-long smile.
I went to an all-girl Catholic school. Some girls were kind of mean and bullying me about it, but other people were nice and, really happy for me. And
Isn't it crazy? When I was 13, I did a talent show. I went to Catholic school as a kid as well, and I sang Yesterday by the Beatles. This is coming.
Oh, my. Wow.
But you know what, though? It was crazy. There were second graders and third graders asking for my autograph.
Really?
It was like in front of 100 people. No big deal. But just I was like, what? It was just crazy.
wow.
So were you signing autographs at age 10?
Yes, I was. Actually, I do. I remember very well when I sort of did my debut at this national theater in Guatemala, and afterwards, all these people were asking me for my autograph, and I was like, what? What is this? What do you mean? I need to sign my name for you? What? I didn't get it.
Now, when we mentioned this Ricky Martin experience, you had kind of a dismissive laugh about it because obviously you hadn't come into your own as an artist yet. At what age were you when you realized you really could sing? And then at what point in your career did you start to get a sense of where you wanted to go with that ability?
I mean, I just remember throughout my teenage years just singing everywhere. They would ask me to sing at weddings and first communions, and then I would, do the occasional festival and this or that. But I wasn't really writing my own songs. I was into musicals. I was into, of course, the great divas, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, and all that. But when I picked up the guitar, I think that's when things started changing for me because I started writing songs. I started listening to a lot of blues artists and jazz and soul and really getting into that. When I finished high school, I told my mom I need to get out of here. I need to find opportunities somewhere else. Again, also because I loved, singing in English and wanting to come here to the United States and do something here. So I enrolled in a music school here in LA at Musicians Institute. I started playing around town everywhere. Oh man, I've played in every possible venue you can imagine in LA. But that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is that I actually came to the States already signed by a record label. I was signed by Warner Brothers when I was 18. But that didn't last very long. Back in those days, like a new president would come in and then they would just drop all the new artists that they had signed. So that happened to me. But they had, given me a hefty advance. So I used that to pay. I used that to pay the school and live and stay here.
Sometimes getting dropped from a major label is
Sometimes
the best thing that could happen, right?
Back then, when they used to have the money to do it, I guess.
That's
know.
right.
Now you're even lucky they even give you an advance.
Arriving in LA, what was the difference on a day-to-day basis of your reality? Okay, now I'm in LA, I'm signed, but now I got, you get dropped. So like, there's a shift.
Yeah.
In your comfort zone.
Absolutely. I think what really helped me was that I was going to this music school and that I met a bunch of other people that were also foreigners, that had also come here to pursue music, and we sort of found comfort in each other. And after this label, I was signed again by Epic, Sony, and I was there for a year, and then again, same thing happened.
Oh, man.
It was really tough, to have that happen 2 times, when I was like 18 and then 20 years old, and always thinking like, oh man, I'm about to like do my record finally, and then nothing happens. So
Did you get to keep the advance?
And yes, I did.
Hell yeah. Gaby, you mentioned the divas, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, obviously American artists.
Yeah.
In a LA Times article, you talked about how Latin music, you just sort of associated that with your parents. That's my parents' music. That's boring. I think we all either embrace the music of our older siblings and parents, or we run as fast away from it as possible.
It's true, yeah.
What made you come back around to it and embrace it? And what was that journey like?
So what happened was in 2005, 2006, somewhere there, I started playing at this place in LA called Largo. It's a great venue. I was doing a residency with a friend of mine, and he told me, you know what, why don't we start playing like some old songs from Latin America? And I said, of course, I know a couple of songs that I could bring to you. And these were my American friends. They didn't really know these songs. So I thought, oh, this is cool. Like I can introduce this music to these people. And that seemed like something special to me. So I started playing the song Quizás, Quizás, Quizás.
Y así pasan los días y yo desesperando y tú contestando. Quizás, quizás, quizás estás perdiendo el tiempo.
And the response was amazing. People were like, "Oh man, like we love when you sing in Spanish, and you should do more of that." That's kind of how it all began. And really, I just started appreciating it.
And your parents were like, "We told you."
Yeah.
They were like hugging each other like, hey, finally.
Yes.
She's come home.
Yeah, I did get a lot of that.
So you've been in the U.S. for a long time now. What is your relationship with Guatemala now?
I mean, I still feel 100% Guatemalan. My whole family is there. I'm here by myself. So it's been 18 years that I've been here. It kind of feels like I never really left. I'm here and this is where I work. Of course, this is where I live. But when I go home, it feels like, okay, my heart is still there, and my culture, my roots, my traditions, my family, everything.
I read that you recently did a benefit concert to raise money to help out with the post-Volcán de Fuego in Guatemala.
Yes.
When that volcano happened, which did not get a lot of press on the national level,
Right.
What was going through your mind? Like, were any personal friends or families affected in the nearby towns? Like,
They were not, thankfully. Volcán de Fuego is far away enough that it didn't affect really anybody in Guatemala City. But of course, those who were communities, entire communities, villages that were like right below the volcano, really poor families. And that was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see that the Guatemalan government didn't do anything to warn these people, beforehand, that the volcano was having activity.
Were they aware of the activity?
They were aware of the activity, and they actually there's a really high-end golfing resort there. It's actually a hotel as well, and those people were warned, and they evacuated.
Yeah.
Of course. So it's like you hear those stories, and it's like, really, oh my God.
Yeah, to give people context as well, I mean, Volcán de Fuego was like an immediate, it's...
No, it was impossible to escape.
Exactly,
Wow.
yeah.
Impossible.
So-
Like, it just completely buried entire villages. And up to this day, they believe that there are still thousands buried in there. And nobody has done anything to go and retrieve those bodies. And it's horrible. Meanwhile, the people that did survive are just living in shelters, and they have nothing. And some of those people like lost entire family members. I mean, I'm telling you, up to 40 family members. I mean, crazy. They lost everything. So I decided to start doing these concerts, these benefit concerts, just to raise some funds to send to some nonprofits that are helping build homes for them.
Bless you. It's a great cause to not only raise money, but also raise awareness.
Raise awareness.
Positive energy and thought is
Yeah.
being transferred throughout the
Exactly.
universe towards the people of Guatemala.
Yeah.
I'm going to change gears here a little bit. In your own narrative, I mean, I'm sure people ask you all the time, like, wow, you speak English so well without an accent. And, do you adopt an accent at times depending on who you're talking to? Or did you learn English at a very young age by virtue of listening to, blues and soul and funk? Like, what's your story there?
Well, I always loved speaking English, even if I didn't really know it that well. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let me tell you my story. When I was a kid and I was playing like with my Barbies and my ponies, I would, this is really funny. I would be in my room playing, and my mom would come in, and she told me this years later. She's like, you'd be there in your room playing, and you'd be like making up these words. And I'd be like, what is that like? And I would tell my mom, well, that's English. They're speaking English. Like, this is what it would sound. Like that. My mom was like, what are you doing? So I said, I want to learn English. I love English. So at a very young age, I started reading in English. All the movies that I would watch would be in English. And of course, the records that I would listen to were in English. I had always a dictionary with me. And so I would be, listening to songs and listening to these old blues songs and really studying the lyrics. And whenever there was a word I didn't understand, I would go to the dictionary. And in school, we had our English class, and I was always really good at it. I just really loved it. My mom has a little Mother's Day card that I gave her when I was like 8. And it says, Mom, I love you. What are you going to do when I'm older and I'm living in the United States?
Intense.
Yeah. Like at 8 years old, I was already like telling her like, yeah, I'm going to leave. I just always knew that I was going to come here somehow.
That's wonderful.
So,
that's wonderful.
For me, growing up in New York, in America, the blues would fall into the basket of music your parents are into. So for you, what was it about the blues that was so magnetic?
Oh, man. I just remember that the first time I heard it. Okay, my parents took me and my sister to New York because I think it was my sister's 15-year birthday, and sort of like instead of throwing her a quinceañera party, they said, we'll take you to New York. I was 13 by the time, and I was walking on Times Square. And I heard this lady busking, and she was singing, something that I had never heard in my life, and it really captivated me. And I remember just standing there for like 20 minutes listening to her. When she was finished, I went up to her and I asked her, like, what's that style that you're singing? What is it? And she said to me, well, that's the blues, honey. And I was like, oh my God.
Wait, I think I know her. I was
The heavens parted. And I was like, what is this heavenly music? So I went to a record store. Of course, they had the blues aisle. I bought compilation CDs because I didn't know any artists. Oh man, I remember bringing home to Guatemala like 20 CDs and I would lock myself in my room and just listen to these songs. And then I got into like Nina Simone and Ella Fitzgerald. The blues kind of led me to like jazz and soul and all these other genres.
And you're a young teenager. That's incredible.
Right.
I mean, that's just that's just not a very typical experience, no matter where you are for a teenager.
Sure.
In
It really
the 90s.
wasn't.
Sure.
Like I got in, and I also got into like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all the, Yeah, I remember
So,
I had posters of all these artists, and my mom would be like, "Who are these people?"
Your mom was like, what about Broadway musicals?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was last year, Mom.
That was last year.
that's so 80.
I'm
88.
listening to Ella.
Yeah,
Chill.
yeah. Yeah.
Gaby, let's talk about what is likely your most recognizable song, even though we don't even hear your voice on it.
Which one? Oh.
So that, of course, is the Parks and Rec theme song, which you co-wrote for the NBC show Parks and Rec, which ran from 2009 to 2015. That's quite a long run and a pretty big deal. How did that happen? And we know what the John Lennon Prize did for you. What did this do for you?
This
Hope you got more than $20,000 for that one.
syndication
More
heaven.
zeros, more zeros. Más cero.
This came through a manager I was working with at the time, and he received an email, and it was an email that was sent to a lot of different composers, and I said, well, instrumentals for me are really easy to write. Once they tell me, it has to have words and it has to be about this and about that, then it gets like a little, okay, I gotta, it just takes a lot more work. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna try this. So I just grabbed my guitar and I came up with like the chord progression, and I called a friend of mine, Vincent Jones, who was an incredible piano player, and he has a studio, and he helped me finish it, and then we added, all these orchestral elements to it. You just never know. It's kind of like such a, shot in the dark, right? It's like there's like 200 other composers, well-known composers, that are going to submit for this. So you just never know. And then we got a call like a couple of weeks later, and they said, "Oh, you made it to the final 60." And we're like, "Oh, okay, yay!" And then when they called us and told us that we got it, man, I really couldn't believe it.
Do you know any of the composers that you beat out? You know who they were?
Oh my God, you know who was one of them? Van Dyke Parks.
Really?
Yes. To this day, he won't let it go. He always jokes about it. It's so funny. It's so funny.
You're referencing Van Dyke Parks, who's the legendary songwriter and arranger who's worked with Frank Sinatra, Randy Newman, U2, and many others, including yourself. How did that come about?
So
he was mad
He was
that you
mad.
beat him, so he stood outside your crib.
Who is this woman?
No, we had already been working at the time. I met Van Dyke like 10 years ago. So we have a new album coming out later this year. We started working on this project 10 years ago. Kind of like an on and off project where I sent him ideas of songs from, old songs from Latin America, and then he would send me back these beautiful arrangements. We did one concert together in Denmark at the Roskilde Festival with the Danish Youth Orchestra, and we presented these songs, for the first time live. It was amazing. And it wasn't until